going on, everybody? This is James Grandmaster Facts Voice, and you're here for another episode of the Facts Project. Today, special guest, repeat guest, always good to have him here, Wells Thompson. We are here to talk about a deliberate topic, of course, in this particular comic that you brought out to us, because I feel like you were teetering on this line, and now I feel like, boom, you fell right in. So yeah, we're here to talk smut.
We're here to talk smut. Yep.
So,
Always good.
Absolutely. Now, first, the title.
Yeah.
Now, when we're talking about like how you basically like put this together, like the title, of course, has to always stand out. It's going to be the deliberate fashion of course, what I expect to dive into once I'm getting into the story. But when it hits you like that, right in your face, it's like, okay.
Yeah, you know what you're gonna get.
Right. Right.
I think that was sort of the thing that made it stick for me was just I as you know, I work in a lot of different genres. I wear a lot of different hats.
You do.
You know, I have all ages stuff. I have like, you know, horror and stuff that's more adult geared, but not like in this way.
I feel like Catskin was the one that kind of like left me right here, like you were on that line.
Yeah, Catskin is not by any it's romance, but it's not by any means, you know, not safe for work. It's not erotica. It's, you know, it gets I'd say it brushes up against like tenderness and you know and some degree of physical connection, especially considering it's about sword fighting. So there's that physicality to it as well. But maybe there's like several layers to why I wanted to work on this, and I think part of it was just like that story wasn't super conducive to talking about sex in a really open way, and
Correct, because there was more to the
wanted
story.
to talk a little bit more about that, you know, not just like relationships being formed, but also like what we do in our everyday relationships. And yeah, I think the title was just a result of, you know, I started writing it and I didn't have a title yet, and people asked me what I was working on, and I would just say smut is that's what I'm working on, and it just sort of stuck. I couldn't find anything better for it, and the longer it went, the more right it felt. So
Right. Now it's interesting because sometimes you can display something in your mind
mhm.
and all of a sudden it will gear you more into angling what you're writing in more in that direction. Do you feel
Sure.
like when basically people were asking you what the title was and you described it as such, that it was like, okay, I can get even deeper into this if I really wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's something definitely freeing about like I think that you know, erotica and not safe for work stuff is it feels like there's a hard boundary there. Like once you start writing it, that's what the project is, no matter what else it is, it's going to be labeled as that.
Yeah.
So as a writer, you're always sort of tiptoeing around whether or not you want to do it, whether or not you feel safe doing it, whether or not your audience is going to accept doing it. But once you just start calling a spade, it's really freeing, and it helps you to just kind of get over that mentally and go, okay, well, I'm doing this now. Let's make it as good as we can. Like let's just work on making it the best version of itself that it can be.
True. True. And in this story, you get the fashionable sense to deal with a lot of relationships
Hmm.
in the story, not only just from the main characters, of course, and who we see on the cover is Dakota and Lance, but
Right.
you also get the perspective of the relationships that Dakota is talking about with her friends,
Hmm.
basically what she's dealt with in the past and how that's basically surfaced as her personality nonetheless.
Hmm. Yeah. So this story kind of goes about a little bit anthology style,
Okay.
where we're introduced to our main characters, our main trio, and then we get one of their stories at a time. And this first one is Dakota's, and that was more to do, I think, with just I didn't feel like there would be enough payoff for an issue one. If
Yeah.
I was to try and juggle all the stories, it would be a lot of setup and not a lot of the thing that people bought the comic for. So I was like, let's just do one story at a time.
Hmm.
Um, but still getting like a very clear sense of who everybody is, and what their conflict is going to be in the future issues. And yeah, it I think I don't remember where I wrote this for a press release or something, but I started writing it sort of as a way to blow off steam. And the thing that like kept me around and the thing that made me really want to push it as like this is my next project that I really want to work on was just I fell in love with the characters. I think they're so much fun and they have such like vibrant personality that I couldn't stay away from them.
Yeah.
And yeah, Dakota is so funny, and this personal trainer ripped woman that knows exactly what she wants, uh but has self-control problems, oddly enough.
Gotcha.
um so yeah, it's this story is like the uh, I would say it's a first date kind of typical story in a lot of ways, just with the added layer of there's already a really like large amount of intensity in terms of like physical attraction and what the aim of the date is supposed to be. She wants to end the date without sleeping with him because in her mind that means she's going to get to know him better.
Yeah, because she's used it as a cop out in the past.
Yeah, she's like, okay, well, I'm not getting anything out of this date, out of this guy.
Yeah.
He's kind of garbage, so I'm just gonna sleep with him. That way this wasn't a waste, and I don't have to worry about anything else. We don't have to worry about this being a good date or not, and I don't have to worry about date number two.
True.
Um, and so she's kind of challenged to like, okay, put that on hold, just like talk to him and see if it works out before you try and rush into anything. Um, and she finds out that he's really charming, and the longer the date goes on, the more stuff that she finds about him that she really likes, the more interested he gets in her, and then it just kind of builds and builds and builds to, an obvious
Yep.
conclusion, I think, but a really fun one nonetheless.
Now, when we're talking about character reference, the lead character of Dakota,
Mhm.
generally, I'm getting the vibes that she was drawn into, or particularly a copy of somebody in particular. Is it Katie O'Brien or Rhea Ripley?
No, we did use a couple of like real bodybuilder references.
Uh-huh.
But I don't think it was either of them.
Mm.
Uh, I
Because
would
that,
have
that
to,
that was that was the vibes I was getting.
I can see that. I can definitely see either one of those. Um, but no, I honestly I couldn't tell you the name, but it was the original design was based on uh yeah, just a bodybuilder that I found on or that I saw on Twitter that was like buff woman of the day, da 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 da. And I was just
Of
like,
the day.
and I already had like the idea for Dakota in mind, and I saw her and I was like, that's it. Um, and then on top of that, as I I went way too hard one day making references for all the characters, so I wound up making a PowerPoint with with all of the with all the character references on it, and
Gotcha.
Dakota's, as I recall, yeah, it was the bodybuilder, it was Vi from Arcane, and it was
Oh,
Ramona Flowers
okay.
from Scott Pilgrim versus the World. That was sort of like the trifecta of characters that built up Dakota.
Ramona Flowers, I see the hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, you also, outside of just basically, most people have to juggle characters if there's a bigger cast.
Hmm.
You in this storyline have the ability to juggle sexualities because there's
Hmm.
there's a plethora. There's almost a
Yeah.
smorgasbord, a buffet, if nonetheless. Of
Yeah, we actually wound up changing one of the stories significantly because our initial idea was it was going to be a sort of journey of self-discovery for one of the characters, and they were going to be they were essentially going to find out that they were non-binary. Um, and we had to shelve it because in order to do the topic justice, we would have needed like an entire graphic novel in and of itself. We didn't think we could pull it off in 20 pages.
Yeah.
And so that story wound up turning into something a lot more akin to like uh the different kinds of like ways that we experience physical touch and communication in relationships.
Yeah.
Because a common, particularly when people get comfortable in relationships, a really common thing that happens is you don't really you kind of skip those earlier stage like physicality things that you used to do. You skip the hand holding, you skip
Yeah.
the cuddling, you skip
The
making
the
out for its
the
own sake.
the,
And it's
the
either like,
courtship.
yeah, you skip all the courtship stuff and you just go from like either we're in a room and we're not interacting or we're talking to we're having sex with nothing in between.
Hmm.
And and I think that a lot of people need but don't know how to express that they need more of like sometimes I just want you to squeeze me a little bit and hold me and make me feel like comforted.
Right.
And that's the third issue. It turns into more of a discussion about that. But that was sort of the beauty of getting to work with these different like relationship types is you get to we sort of say the same thing with all three of the stories, but in radically different ways and in ways that are approachable for different kinds of people and different kinds of relationships.
Yeah, it's almost like taking in the terms of like a almost like a Gen Z Sex in the City, like how people
Yeah.
interact now.
I didn't Sex in the City was one of those things that like I didn't think of when I was writing it, but then I looked at the setup. I'm like, oh, three people talking about sex in a coffee shop. And I'm like, this is very Sex in the City.
Very, very. And also just bringing in the fact that like how people have their means of interacting each other's relationships. You're taking into accord how the dynamics last. Like basically, uh Dakota being unsure of herself because she has this mechanism that she literally just puts into overdrive when she feels like
Yeah.
at a certain point something's going to go left. But then she's like listening to Jess and Rita and their type of uh in their relationships, and it's almost
Mhm.
like, do I cherry pick off of you or no?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a freedom in like talking about personal details very openly with your friends.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why it's three women and not three men is because I this is just not conversations that happen very often between
And the
men.
conversations are graphic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Women have a very sort of free way of talking about their personal lives that it doesn't feel as guarded or protected. It's just kind of all out in the open. At least that's always been my experience. It's always been my wife's experience with like talking with women is a lot more tends to get put out on the table with a lot fewer inhibitions.
Yeah.
And they might poke fun at each other, but it's in a very kind of loving and supportive way. And that was sort of the energy that I wanted to bring to it. I don't think it works with three dudes in a coffee shop. I think
No, no, we're
they
not talking
immediately
about any of that at all. And
shut
it's not
down
to,
that vulnerability.
and it's not to say that like, like that's like a common thing, like we're trying to be like withholding information. It's just a common thread amongst like a bunch of guys that we're just not gonna
Mhm.
talk like that.
Yeah. So I think that in particular like uh would throw some guys off just that
Oh yeah.
dynamic. But
Oh,
like
whoa,
as
what did you say?
very casually flipping through your phone. Oh yeah, and here's my girlfriend. She's naked. Don't worry about it. Like that has happened to me at multiple like brunches and hangouts with my friends that are girls. They once they determine you like not a threat, they don't care at
Yeah.
all.
Now almost like it's like when you're doing your research in this, it's like because of course you probably had your wife and were asking advice and it maybe into writing this down.
I mean, she's a co-writer on this. She was very influential
Perfect.
in. yeah, bringing these girls to life and these relationships to life. Um, I mean, a lot of it is based off of my friendships from college and adulthood and sort of I for whatever reason, just the people that I hang out with, almost
Yeah,
universally women, almost universally queer. So I get a lot of perspective into
got you.
worlds that I don't always inhabit, but like have sort of been welcome and shown into. Um, and yeah, there's the amount of openness in discussing that, I think, is both really shocking, like shocking to a lot of people, but also I think is really healthy because getting it out there means that you have a lot more cause to say, oh, this is normal, or oh, I need to fix this.
Right.
Whereas, you know, like I said, guys don't typically talk about it. We just kind of hold it here, and then something happens, and we go, I don't know, she was crazy and she decided to snap on me. When
Yeah.
really it was something that was building up over time that we just didn't recognize.
But in Eva, also, there's another dynamic to that because, you live in Chicago now, right?
Yeah,
But you're originally a small town guy.
yeah. I grew up in Little Rock
Yeah.
in Arkansas.
Oh,
So
okay. So semi,
yeah,
but
I mean,
also
large town for small state.
right. But even so, like the perspectives that basically you're bringing to life, you necessarily wouldn't hear any of that type of stuff in a small town.
Yeah, not nearly as much. I think more in like
This is
in
city
private
girl stuff.
settings that exists, but yeah, the smaller the town, the less stuff gets kind of put out in the open, the more stuff gets shelved and left to for everyone to kind of figure out on their own. So
Yep.
yeah, I think talking about it is important. Having people that you can confide in. I'm not saying just like shout it out to the world, but having people that you can confide in is important and is healthy for people.
Now, also, when we're looking at Dakota, because of course, most of these storylines, of course, revolve around her and the inevitability of a possible relationship with Lance.
Right.
So,
This first issue revolves around her for sure.
right.
Yeah, the second one revolves around Jess, the third one revolves around Rita, but yeah, that was sort of the how we wanted to lay that out. But
So, is it more hurt than help as far as like the conversational pieces because you have these three issues, and it's like we're trying to give you advice just from past experiences. So,
sure.
so is it like, is this going to propel you to go gung ho in the relationship or try to wait things out? Is there going to be patience involved, or is it just like I'm not listening to anything you people are saying?
Um, no, I think that she takes like kind of their input to heart, which I as a sort of a background theme of all of this is just kind of that friendship that they have and the closeness that these three characters have, even if they aren't all present in all stories at all points in time. There was But I mean, there was so much stuff that we had to cut just for the sake of like, we have page counts we have to hit. We
Oh
can't
yeah,
just have these be sprawling. um, but there were scenes where Dakota like sneaks into the bathroom and goes, "Okay, what do I do? I really like he's turning out to be kind of a cool guy, and I really want to sleep with him. How do I do?" And she's like, I don't know, I'll come pick you up if you want." And then her story gets interrupted with by someone else's. But
that's
yeah,
okay.
there was just
That's
and
the
then she goes, "You're on your own," hangs up. But that was sort of the vibe she's trying to take it to heart, but it ultimately falls back on her personally.
uh-huh.
She does a really good job until she doesn't. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, it's almost like the Cyrano de Bergerac tactic. It's like
Mhm.
I'll be your ear
Sure.
to coach you through it. And the whole time it's like I'm just repeating what this person is saying to this person when I'm not actually using like I'm not exuding my personality at all.
Yeah. It's that, but it's kind of the opposite. Like Dakota has so much personality and is so confident that I don't think she has a doubt in her mind that like this date can end any way that she wants it to end.
Mhm.
She's not, she's not vying for his attention so much as she's like, I want to try and end it before the point that it would normally end, so that I can like force myself to have date number two.
Right.
Um, and she needs a little bit of help getting there.
Okay.
Um, yeah, but the entire thing just sets up for, a really kind of funny rapport between her and her friends, her and her date, um, and this internal conflict that gets set up that's really meaty and that has a lot of tension and the kind of like playful you know playful physicality and playful language you would want in a story like this that
Hmm.
is ultimately geared toward something of a payoff, I'll say.
Got you. Now understanding that, the cliche that comics are a visual medium,
Of course.
and you write a script
Hmm.
and with a graphic tone, and outside of just the cover, because we understand what it is, and outside of the title for what it is, the descriptions that
Hmm.
these girls are talking in, and almost
Sure.
in a sense of how you're coaching a artist to draw them. Be like, one is like, okay, this guy's having sex with his girl and it's a bad smell in the room, like like this is like something like that. Or better yet, you're like talking about a squirting orgasm in the comic.
Sure.
It's like, okay, what's the best way to describe that when you're displaying this to an artist and you're like, go shoot for the hip. Do what you got to do.
I mean, there's definitely it's I found it was really important to be both really open and really blunt in my descriptions, but also like always make sure that the artist is comfortable with what we're doing and the direction that we're taking it.
That's what I
Um,
was thinking. Yep.
yeah, I again the real life very much works in tandem with the comic in that the comic is about um communication and trust and how that affects our relationships and affects our sex life. And
Yeah.
as I'm for the first time working with Bianca, the artist on this, Bianca Milanes, um I have to navigate like, okay, what are the boundaries here? What are you comfortable with?
Safe
uh
word. Safe words.
exactly. Yeah, she was a real sport about it. She has not done this level of not safe for work before. So when we were talking about it initially, she was like, I don't know. I was like, cool, look over the synopsis. If it's not your thing, let me know. And she was like, or I'll send you the first script, I'll send you the synopsis, and you let me know what you're comfortable with. And she was like, honestly, I thought it was really funny, and it's exactly the kind of thing I want to read, so I'm in.
Ah,
Um, and from there, yeah, we just took it on like, what say it in terms of just like what are you comfortable with drawing. It's sort of a case by case basis, but for the most part it's been it hasn't been too difficult to navigate in terms of just
mhm.
like uh I think she understands what needs to be done to tell the story and is fully willing to go there, which I love. um yeah, it's a little bit awkward, especially when it comes to like if I need to pull out references, I'm gonna you have to be like, this reference is coming, it contains this imagery, so be aware before you open it. Also, please don't ask where I got this because I don't really want to cop to that.
That's great. Now, when we're looking at it like it Kickstarter, this is generally a space in comics that's very familiar, very
Hmm.
common nowadays, more than anything.
For sure.
When you're looking at the landscape of pretty much a lot of NSFW stuff that are pretty much out there, what do you feel like is like the best way that your comic is separated from the rest? Other things can possibly be done without taste, and
Yeah.
by the way that you're scripting this, it's done with taste.
Yeah, I'm definitely not here to call anyone out or anything
Yeah.
or like, but I do think that there's a prevalent, not just on Kickstarter, in comics in general, I think there's like a prevalence of using cheesecake or black bag covers or stuff that is like you said in that not safe for work category, and it's either a sales tactic, it's either just a cover, and like, hey, nothing wrong with that, but that's the majority of what it is. Or you'll get like, this is a normal story that didn't have a lot going for it, so we threw some nudity in there so we could have a selling point.
Ah,
but
yeah, you know,
the
true.
but like, the nudity and sex doesn't tell the story in any meaningful way. It's just kind of there as something to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, not calling anyone out, not shaming anyone for liking those. Those don't really do it for me.
Okay.
The comics that I always really loved that take it to that level are books like Sunstone, Sex Criminals, Money Shot,
Mm-hmm.
stuff that the store like, there's a lot of nudity, there's a lot of sex in the book, but it's also that is being used to tell the story, that is being used to characterize the people involved in it. Every sex scene tells you something about the characters and what
Uh-huh.
their relationship is like, or moves the story forward. In Money Shot's case, it very often winds up saving the world, or the known universe, because that's a wild comic. But it's a really good one, and quite funny as well. Um, and I do think there are comics out there that get it right. I just want to see more of them, and so I that's why I started writing one.
Yeah.
That was the ultimate goal with Smut, was to make a comic about sex that tells you something about sex, and that the sex tells you something about the characters.
Yeah,
And
because you have some people that use it like as like broad terminology. Or some people will display it as such. They'll talk about it like almost in the aspect that sex is useless when it's used in movies because it's a
yeah,
tool
there's been discourse about like worthless sex scenes, and
in
it's
movies. Yes.
not, yeah, and it's typically movies that they're talking about. And I mean, I don't think it's necessarily like broad strokes true, but there are definitely examples of like, this was here for no other reason than fan service, essentially.
Right.
Um, it doesn't actually tell us anything about the characters. It doesn't really. It's you know I think the best thing you can say about most of those is at least it's like an escalation of the relationship of these two characters.
Correct.
Maybe it's gratuitous, or maybe but like, at least there's that much. Um, yeah, I don't think it's worth being like, get rid of all sex scenes. They're not worth it because of that. Because like, it's a part of how most of us live our lives.
Hmm.
So it's definitely worth seeing. It's worth like expressing in art. It's worth talking about. I just think it should be talked about more deliberately in
Hmm.
some cases.
Yeah.
And very often the stuff that is sold to us as, this talks about sex, this is about sex, isn't really. It's just kind of that was there to sell the story, and the story itself is fine.
Yeah, because I feel like almost in the terms of your characters, especially like somebody like Dakota, who we see a lot of in this first issue, it's
Mhm.
more so it's like, how do I get out of my own way? Because this is the way that
Yeah,
I generally go about it. And I want to build a relationship. But the thing is, I'm
right.
always geared in one section.
Yeah. Yeah, the conflicts are built around what's going on in their sex lives. And that was by design. That was I wanted to tell very deliberate stories about relationships and sex, and how it can, sometimes go wrong.
Yeah.
Um,
Bad advice.
yeah. Exactly. Um, So yeah, that was sort of what differentiates smut from a lot of it, a lot of what I think is out there, and that's I hope what people really like and take away from it is one, the characters are really great and relatable, and they're going to be people that you want more of by the time it's over, and two, that it's a book that didn't lure you in with kind of a false promise. It talks really passionately about what that entails, not just for the characters, but in ways that are kind of applicable to all of our lives.
Mm. Now, when we're talking about like this being, of course, a 3-issue series,
Mhm.
mainly from the perspectives of 3 different women, was
Mhm.
there any one that was particularly your favorite to write? Was it Jess? Was it Rita? Was it Dakota? Who?
Uh, I think. You're asking me to pick children. I I I love all of them for very different reasons,
Okay.
and they all had their own challenges. Jess's story is probably the most about the sex. She
Mhm.
has a very established relationship. She you don't get the sample pages I have put up. You only really get to see like Rita's conflict and Dakota's conflict. The next couple of pages start to explore Jess's. But basically, she's very comfortable in her life, and her girlfriend wants to switch things up in a way she's not necessarily comfortable with at first. Uh, and so it becomes a story about her trying to redefine boundaries, stretch herself and grow in a way that is beneficial for the relationship and beneficial for both of them, and
Right.
maybe learn to like it like a little bit. But she's by nature a very controlling person. She's what my wife calls a cat person, in that she wants yesterday to be like today, to be like tomorrow, to be like forever.
Right.
Um, she
Nice.
wants absolute vice grip on the way her life is run, and so when she gives up a little bit of control, it's really really scary for her. Exploring that relationship was great. That was also great because that was one that I worked with my wife quite a bit on, and
Okay.
my editor. Shout outs to Cabbage, to Krista Herrotter. They all three of us, I think, had a lot of input on shaping that story and making it what it is. Um, but so that one is probably my favorite in a lot of ways. I think Dakota's was my favorite to write, though, if that makes sense. That was this first one is so much fun
Hmm.
and really surprised me in kind of the way I was able to flex comedic muscles that I don't get to all the time.
Gotcha.
Um, it's a funny story. It's a really cute story. It's with a character that you wouldn't expect to be put into that a funny and cute story, but it works out really well as a result. And yeah, I don't think there's a way to read this first issue and not like really feel something for Dakota by the end of it. So I'm proud of it. I like it a lot.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Look, hey, I look forward to the to basically the rest of this series and how this is
Mhm.
basically going to transpire. So I appreciate you doing this with me.
Of course, yeah. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, man. So as of right now, this is day one, so I'm actually happy that we were able to talk about this and at the beginning of this, and it seems to be
Mhm.
proceeding very rapidly because there's a lot of interest in this. I mean, the title does stick out.
I can't imagine why, but yeah, no, we've had a pretty positive reaction so far, and I'm hoping to keep up that momentum for the next couple of weeks. That would be great.
All right. Well, Wells, once again, thank you for doing this with me. Look forward to the rest of the campaign and for everybody to get smut in their hands. I
Absolutely.
don't know if that
Get some smut
sounds
in your life.
particularly. I don't know if that's the right wordage, but yeah, yeah, you get where I'm going. All
No,
right,
I mean, love smut, get smut. Share smut around.
You know, it's all about branding with you. I tell you,
Talk to your friends about smut.
see, it just rolls off the tongue.
It does.
Yeah. All right. So for everybody here at the Facts Project, I'm James Grandmaster Facts Boyce, Wells Thompson. Go out and get smut right now on Kickstarter. We got a whole month, so feel free. And we are out.